Keren HaYesod, the basic fundraiser for the building of the nation, sponsors study missions all over North America. A study mission is when a group of people from one community is sent to Israel. Our group, being a young leadership group, was sent for a purpose. Keren HaYesod knows that we are the next generation to build our Jewish community and build the bond between Winnipeg and Israel. The glue that has kept Jews in the Golah woven in the fabric of our country.
I think the goals of the mission were to turn people on to work for Israel and our community, and I'm absolutely certain that they were met.
I went committed to Israel and committed to being Jewish, and I came back and those feelings are stronger for me now, but it's hard to pass on those feelings to people who weren't on the mission. I think the whole purpose of these missions, of course, is to get people turned on so they will come back and give more money to Israel. I think that is the bottom line. It's all nice if we have emotional attachment to Israel, but I think that has to translate into financial dollars.
I've always had a deep love for Israel, and I've always been committed to get other people to feel the same. I feel this mission is such an important vehicle to get people not only excited about working for Israel, but get them excited about working for the community. Get them committed, and get them excited about Judaism. To me, that's what it comes down to, excitement about Judaism, which ties into the excitement for Israel.
There has not been a young leadership mission from our community in many years. Was it worthwhile? There are 19 people who are sure of the benefits.
I don't think I could have done it a better way, other than moving there and having the contacts already set up by somebody else or some other type of agency to allow us to speak to people in government, in education, and in military. In 10 days, I had a history lesson like one I never expected.
I've always felt a responsibility to Israel. I always felt a closeness, a special bond to the people. I like to follow the news and follow the problems. Going there made my feelings stronger. What it did change dramatically was my commitment to the community. I had very little to do with the community before. I never really thought about it.
The 19 members of our mission were a diverse group. Most of us were acquaintances and some of us were friends. It was our common experiences during our 10-day tour in Israel that bonded us together for a common purpose. The spirit of our group started when we landed in Israel Friday, Erev Shabbat. We were greeted by members of Keren HaYesod at the airport and given our itinerary. We were introduced to David, our tour guide. Little did we realize as we entered our tour bus that this would become our home for the next 10 days. Our tour was very hectic as our days began at 7 or 8 a.m. with touring. We usually arrived back at our hotel by 6. Dinner was at 8 and a speaker usually followed. We spoke to people and saw things that most tourists aren't able to see.
I've been supporting Israel from home for quite a long time, and I wasn't quite sure of what to expect. You know, all I had to go on really was what I had seen in the newspapers, read, and talked to people who had gone and then come back. It's always difficult. You sort of have an abstract idea of what to expect. I guess you can only compare it to what you have at home. And when I got there, and once I saw it, I was overwhelmed. Not only geographically, the look of the country, but by the people and their situation. It more than met what I had expected. That really got to me, the fact that the signs were in Hebrew. Not only was everyone Jewish, but everyone was speaking a common language. Even though you saw people who looked completely different, they were from all corners of the world, but yet they all had this common purpose. They all wanted to live in Israel because they were Jewish, and they were committed to living the sort of life in Israel together through all the hardships that they had. That was quite inspiring to me, seeing these people pulling together and working for the same cause.
Jerusalem was really special. Walking down the stairs and seeing the Wailing Wall for the first time, I found it very emotional.
It could have been the time when we went south to Ofakim to visit an absorption center for Falasha Jews, or when we were traveling north to visit an army camp, Machaneh Oz. It could have been when we had lunch on a moshav and talked to a group from South Africa who made Aliyah, or when we went to the Good Fence to speak to the mayor of Metula. Every day, every evening was an immersion into some particular aspect of Israeli life. I can't describe to you the feeling or the exchange that took place between the group and the mayor's office in Metula, nor can I explain the feeling walking into the absorption center for the Ethiopian Jews. But I think that this is the very basis for these missions. What we saw, what we felt every day, was an exchange one could only get by being there.
The fact that we take young people who have a knowledge of Judaic life and Jewish values, and we allow them to see what Israel has to offer, that's the beginning. I think Israel itself, the people, the country, and the places that the mission went to would allow each of our participants to bring back ideas and things that each would want to pass on to others automatically. Our mission allowed them to see the country in a different way, different than some had seen Israel before. And this resulted in their returning to the community and saying to their friends and others, this is what we're interested in. This is what you should be interested in, and this is what we want to expose you to. And I think that's all it is, a matter of exposure. I don't believe you can force anything upon anybody, but if you expose them to certain ideas that will entice them to want to get involved, then they will get involved. Because that's exactly what happened with our mission. We just wanted to firstly expose our group to community life here in Winnipeg, and then expose them to Israel and life there. I know we've been successful in what we've done, because we now have 20 people who want to be more involved in this community here in Winnipeg, and I strongly believe missions will help, and that is why missions should continue in the future.
We were heading for an army base, Machaneh Oz, and as we approached this camp, which was 3 kilometers from the Syrian border, the barbed wire and the security were abound. Because we were a group from Keren HaYesod, we gained access easily, but only so far, and of course photography was off limits. We were invited into the mess hall, very much a camp-like setting, and we separated ourselves into groups of 2 or 3 to share lunch with the soldiers. Our conversation went from a mellow discussion into some pretty heated debates. By the end of lunch, we were getting to share concepts, and one of the soldiers invited us for coffee. But it was late, and we had to continue the tour of the base. Yet I left the table feeling uneasy, unable to answer these questions. Why wasn't I living in Israel if I cared so much? And why can't I see an end to the fighting, an end to the war in Lebanon? I was still thinking about those questions when we were taken to see the Merkava, the most sophisticated tank of its kind in the world. The soldiers, boys of 18 and 19, were showing us the tank, helping us up to inspect the mechanical and technical genius of its insides. There was a good feeling watching these young soldiers happily showing us the wonders of their tank, enjoying our interest, enjoying the exchange. Yet in the back of my mind, all I could see were these same boys in their tank, alone in Lebanon. Then they took us to Memory Hall, Cheder HaZikaron. In here were the photographs of all the soldiers from that unit that lost their lives in the wars of Israel. 3 boys were recently killed on maneuvers. Their jeep ran over a landmine. The commander simply said it was an accident. We don't like these things to happen, but they do. Again, the emotional exchange of, thank God I don't have to worry about a brother or family or friends in Lebanon. Again, the feeling of being so proud and feeling so useless.
These young boys are going to war, fighting for their country, and they go willingly. Also, every year for a month, they leave their families and they go and spend a month in the reserves. They do that until they're 56 years old. That's a very big disruption of life to me, and if they can do that, then the least that we can do here is to work very hard to support them in any way that we can. The mission was a success in that it made 19 of its members share a vision. The vision that we are partners, lifetime partners in a country that carries our family history. Exposing our young people to this kind of educational experience can only benefit Israel and our community. It's a two-way street. The existence of Israel is so important for our existence, and our community cannot survive without Israel.
Well, I think where we go from here is to expose others. We have to bring more people into young leadership and just expose them. I don't think anything will happen differently than what has happened before. That is, once they're exposed, they will want to become involved. That's what happened to our 20 people, and that's what will happen to the next 20 people. We have to keep it going. I don't think you could just close in and focus on our group. I think it's nice that they are cohesive and want to keep together, but each one in the group has outside interests from the group itself. Certain people are sitting on different boards, and that's what we want. We want people to get involved in the community and get involved in their own way.
Well, basically, it's a commitment now. What I have personally, which I didn't have before, is a reason to go out and work for the community. It would never really cross my mind to get involved with the community. I always thought I was too young. I always thought it was just the elders, let's say, of the community. But when you go to Israel and see the young people that are running the country and defending the country, you really come back and say, I'm certainly capable of helping out.